What's happening, guys? Back at you with another video. So in this video, I'm going to be basically ranking down the Rocky and Creed main opponents. Basically, these are the opponents they were kind of facing in the movies, the opponents they were basically facing in their final fights. So basically going to be ranking them from bottom to the top. Let's get into it. So coming in at the bottom is definitely probably an easy choice, and among other people, definitely will be easy choice for them, and that's going to probably be Tommy Gunn. Tommy Gunn from Rocky 5. So this is where Tommy Gunn was basically Rocky was basically mentoring Tommy Gunn in the fifth Rocky movie, and he goes down a certain road. He starts getting big headed and all that, and the money and persuades him and sways him and all that, and basically we get into a final fight in the end of Rocky 5 where he goes up against Rocky. So it's not, and it was basically a street fight. Was your typical boxing match that we usually get at the end of movies and all that, but nonetheless, Tommy Gunn it's not doesn't really bring too much as a villain or uh, really in the movies. He just like trying to make his way in boxing and all that stuff, and basically just got persuaded and swayed a certain way, and started to take it out on Rocky and stuff. So not really really high caliber kind of villain if I had to say so myself. But moving on to the next one, we're going to go ahead and go with Ricky Conlan. This is the main opponent for the first Creed movie. I'll say that he's serves his purpose when it comes to a main opponent. He's in there. We get a great main final boxing match with him between him and Adonis Creed. He serves his purpose for the most part. The reason why I put him at this spot on the list though is because uh, he's just there. Like I say, he serves his purpose. He's just there to be there, and he serves his purpose as being in that final fight, that final boxing match, which makes it great and all. But they don't really give him a kind of way we don't see from his perspective. He shows up in the movie, trash talks a little. We don't really know too much about him and all that, and he's just a main opponent to be a main opponent. Like I said, he serves his purpose for the most part in the final match, but he's just there really to be there. He doesn't really bring a whole lot. So whereas like we kind of get story and all that stuff, he's just there. But he does serve his purpose and does a great job in the final boxing match against Adonis Creed. Moving on to the next one on the list is going to be Mason Dixon. This is the main opponent from Rocky Balboa. He's kind of along the lines of Ricky Conlan, but they do put just a little, it's a little bit more than Ricky Conlan. They put a little bit of a story in there. Slightly, we get slight perspective stuff on him, but nonetheless, he's still kind of along the lines of Ricky Conlan to where he's there to be there with just a little hint of a story and perspective going on. But he's there basically as the main opponent, the big main opponent of the final boxing match in Rocky Balboa. And, he serves his purpose and all that, like I said, with Ricky Conlan. But the reason why he's above Ricky Conlan a little bit is just because they give him a little hint of a story, a little hint of perspective. So that's why I put him on this spot on the list. Next up on the list is going to be Clubber Lang from Rocky 3. The thing with this one is that I like this character of Clubber Lang. I like Rocky 3, Mr. T playing Clubber Lang. But like I kind of said in the previous video, Clubber Lang is basically what the 80s is about. This is like Rocky 3 is kind of the start of the first Rocky movie to be in the 80s, so it's kind of starting that 80s trend, 80s vibe, the 80s campiness, and Mr. T playing Clubber Lang, he brings all that to this movie. He brings all the 80s feels, the 80s vibes. He's all personality, and he just really fits that 80s tone when it comes to the Rocky movies for that time period that they came out during the 80s. So he fits all that. I really enjoy his character and his the way he is as a villain and a main opponent. He just brings that, like I said, that 80s vibe, and I like it. I really like it a lot. And, just the way he's just all brutal and all that, he really packs a punch and all that. And, like I said, he's all personality, and he really fits the movie. And I enjoy Rocky 3. One of the reasons why I enjoy Rocky 3 is because Clubber Lang brings all that personality and all that to the movie. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I put him on this spot on the list. Moving on to the next spot on the list is going to be Ivan Drago's son, and I forget his first name. I'm sorry, I forgot his first name. But basically, you gotta know Ivan Drago's son from Creed 2. With Drago, he is this almost like his dad, where he's this big guy. He's brutal. He packs a punch. He brings all that with him the same way his dad kind of brought it in Rocky 4 and all that. We get a little perspective on him, a little story on him. You know, he kind of, that's kind of thing I like about Creed 2 is like with the same thing with Drago and then with Ivan Drago, both of them come out in the movie. You kind of get the perspective and their kind of story with it, so you kind of feel for them a little bit and you see reasons why they're trying to do the things they do. But you know, basically Drago is basically listening to his dad. You know, his dad wants to be get the recognition and get back into Russia and all that from his native country. So he pushes his son hard, and he pushes his son to basically be in boxing and take on Creed and all that, so he could basically get back into his country, get back the recognition of Russia and all that. So basically, he listens to his dad. He's trying to get back in it, but you get a little bit of a sense of where he's coming from. You get his story a little bit. You get perspective on him. So, and especially during the final match where uh, things perspire, and the way the final match ends up and all that. You get a sense of who he really is and all that. So it definitely brings a lot to his story, and kind of I like that. I like that they did that in Creed 2. Speaking of Drago, next up on the list is going to be Ivan Drago, his father. So Ivan Drago, one of the most iconic and memorable villains of the whole Rocky franchise. Um, starting in Rocky 4, we get Drago as this larger than life villain who is a man of few words, who basically is kind of just being who he is because he's just doing it for his country. We don't get a whole lot from him. He's kind of that character, at least in Rocky 4, he's kind of that character where we don't get a whole lot from him. We just see him as the main opponent. We see him as the villain. Even though he doesn't really say a lot, we just see him as this conquering villain, this powerful villain that killed Apollo Creed, that Rocky's trying to take vengeance out on. Goes to Russia, has this big old boxing match against Drago. So he's one of the, like I say, he's one of the most iconic and memorable villains of Rocky, whole Rocky franchise, and just brings that to him. And then going on to into Creed 2, where he comes back, we, like I said before, with his son, we do get a story and perspective on why he does the things he does. Trying to get that recognition, get back into his country. So he pushes his son, and we see that throughout the movie. He's pushing his son, and then some of the stuff I like comes down to when they're having a final boxing match in the movie, and he sees his son. He sees this while he's seeing his son boxing in that match. His wife, his ex-wife leaves during the match. You can see it on his son's face, the hurt that whenever he sees his mom leave. Then you see him push himself in the final match, and now he's taking a beating against Adonis, and you just see this change come over him, and you see this change where he's seeing his son getting beat down, and then he changes, he snaps, he's like, this is my son, I gotta protect him and all that stuff. And that one of the things I like about it, about this character in Creed 2, is like, he sees that, he snaps, he changes his mind by his son, that he has to protect his son. And then you see him, he comes out the corner, he's going up onto the ring, he has the towel in his hand, he throws the towel, and he basically does that to protect his son. And it's definitely a great character change for him, and I like how they were able to do that. It's kind of a callback to the Rocky 4. So I like how they were able to do that. And then you see towards the end of the movie too, where his son is running, and you see Ivan Drago next to him running too. So you get that kind of perspective, as opposed to earlier in the movie, you saw him in a truck or car, whatever it was, pushing his son to run, and then he was the one that was in the car honking at him and yelling at him, pushing him and all that stuff like that. And then you get to the end of the movie where he's actually running with him, so you get that change in his character, which I do like. That we do get that change in his character. But Drago is just one of those iconic, memorable villains in the whole Rocky and Creed franchise. I like Rocky 4. Like I said, Rocky 4 is one of my favorite movies out of the whole franchise. So I like this character and I like this villain. So he's definitely going to be higher up on the list. Moving into the number 2 spot is going to be Damian Anderson, the most recent opponent that we get in Creed 3. And the one with this one is that Jonathan Majors plays him phenomenally. He brings this kind of story, this kind of background and perspective to the character, and we see that he's more kind of full fledged out with the whole story and background going, where it's more personal, kind of where he knew Adonis Creed when he was younger. They were both friends when they were younger. Um, one thing leads to another, a bad thing happens. He ends up in jail for about 18 years, comes back, trying to prove himself. He just calls out for a chance. He says he just wants a chance. Asks Adonis for that chance. He gets it, but he just takes a turn to where it's like it's really a personal story between Adonis Creed and him, and we get a lot of backstory, we get a lot of perspective, and you kind of feel for him a little bit. Even though he's like the villain, you kind of see where he's coming from. You kind of feel for him a little bit, and then the match at the end of the movie of Creed 3, I like the creative style that Michael B. Jordan was able to bring us. Just the metaphorical kind of dream sequence that we get. It's really creatively. I like how it's different from other matches that we gotten, and it's very brutal. It's very hard hitting. It's very powerful. And I just like everything that Jonathan Majors was able to bring to this character. Acting wise, he acted the character phenomenally. And Jonathan Majors has been doing a good job over the past few years with his acting and the roles that he gets. He's been doing a good job. And then this one really stands out to me to where everything I said, everything we get, perspective, a backstory, you get that feeling from him. Jonathan Majors just plays the character phenomenally. But with that being said, we get to the number one spot, the top spot, and that of course is going to go to Apollo Creed. We probably spent the most, like out of all the main opponents, this is probably the most time we spent with Apollo Creed since he comes out in 4 different Rocky movies. He's definitely a iconic character out of all the Rocky movies. Just the way that that Apollo Creed is, he really isn't like he really isn't like a villain per se. He's just kind of a main opponent. One of the things about him is like throughout the first Rocky movie, really he's just trying to put on a good show. So he plucks this nobody or underdog kind of thing to where he chooses Rocky to kind of put on a good show, to bring that underdog feel into it and put on a good show. That's what he's basically trying to do in the first Rocky movie. Maybe he underestimates Rocky just a little bit, but he's never trying to badmouth or like trash talk Rocky or anything like that. Basically, he just wants to put on a good show, a good boxing match, and he kind of underestimates him a little bit until we get to the final match in the first Rocky movie, to where he sees that Rocky is actually serious, and he starts to put up his A game and all that, and we know how the first match ends up, where it's a split decision. Apollo does win in the end with the split decision, but he sees how Rocky actually is, and then actually going on, and during the match, he was like telling Rocky, like during the match, he was like, oh, there's not going to be a rematch, there's not going to be a rematch, and all that. But after the match, he's like, oh, I want to fight you, I'll fight you anytime, anywhere, and he has that kind of a shot at his ego, kind of in a way, and he's like saying, I'll fight you anywhere, any place, anywhere, anytime, whatever. And he's trying to have another match with Rocky, a rematch with Rocky, and then you get in the come to the second Rocky movie, and people kind of are down on him to where they thought the match was rigged. They thought he's not what he used to be. Like how was Rocky able to come this close to beating him and all that stuff. And like so, in basically in the second Rocky movie, he wants to rematch so he could prove to the people that he still got it. It wasn't rigged or anything like that. But once we get the final match in Rocky 2, we come to see that even though it was a good match and Apollo Creed puts up his A game, he still loses to Rocky, and Rocky wins the championship. And going on after that, going into Rocky 3, where Rocky is defeated by Clubber Lang, Apollo Creed comes to him. He says, he comes to him as almost like a mentor of sorts. He teaches him his ways of boxing. He's like, you got to change your style and all that. So he comes to him when he's needed, when Rocky needs somebody, he comes to help him, and basically starts his mentorship, starts his becoming his friend more and all that, and that's how we get this friendship becomes his friendship, and then once in Rocky 4, when Drago kills Apollo Creed in a boxing match, Rocky's out for revenge, trying to avenge Apollo Creed. So Apollo Creed is definitely a full-fledged out story to where he was the main opponent, but like he's not too much of a villain to Rocky really. And then we see that where he's like becomes the opponent, he's kind of the adversary, but he later becomes almost a mentor and basically a friend to Rocky. So really, it's like a full-fledged out story arc between the 4 movies that Apollo Creed comes out in, and really just memorable and iconic. That of this character of Apollo Creed. You can't say Rocky without Apollo Creed in there. So really, just Apollo Creed is one of those characters that just stands out. And as a main opponent, he does a good job of being a main opponent, not necessarily a villain or anything like that, like an adversary. But later on becomes a friend. So he has a pretty good story arc, going on in the Rocky movies, and I put him at number one because of all of that. But yeah, he's definitely a cool character, awesome character and stuff. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below, how would you rank the main opponents of all the Rocky and Creed movies. But that's going to do it all for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Remember, if you want to be a part of Team Legendary, all you got to do is subscribe and turn notifications on so you know when I post another video. Hope you all have an awesome day. And remember, be legendary.